What does fear feel like to you? Maybe it's butterflies fluttering in your stomach, or it might seem like cold fingers creeping up your spine. Fear can feel like a lump in your throat that makes it hard to swallow. Or it might chase thoughts round and round inside your head, refusing to stop. Enough! When you face something hard, fear can show up in 100 different ways. It can threaten to stop you in your tracks. But you don't have to let fear be the boss of you. When fear shouts, "You can't do it," stop. Take a deep breath. Listen for that still, quiet voice of God. God says, "Be strong and brave. Do not be afraid. Do not lose hope. I am the Lord your God. I will be with you everywhere you go." When you know that God is with you, you can keep going. You can walk straight through those fears. And when others see you choose to be brave, even when you're afraid, they can see God at work in your life. That's why courage is an amazing way to worship God with your life. Because worship is about more than just singing loud, it's all about living loud.
I'm gonna stand my ground, no I will not be moved, because I know what's right, and that's what I'm gonna do. When everyone around tries to drag me down, I'm gonna stand my ground, I'm gonna stand. Oh, it seems that every step I take, there's a choice I have to make. What's right, what's wrong, what's wise, what should I choose? On your truth I will depend, no giving up, no giving in. And with every new decision, do my best to honor you. Ooh, I'm gonna stand my ground, no I will not be moved, because I know what's right, and that's what I'm gonna do. When everyone around tries to drag me down, I'm gonna stand my ground, I'm gonna stand. It doesn't matter what tomorrow brings, stormy weather or broken dreams, I know you're always there to see me through. And of this one thing I'm sure, in your love I am secure. And I'm standing on your promises, and I'll always trust in you. Ooh, I'm gonna stand my ground, no I will not be moved, because I know what's right, and that's what I'm gonna do. When everyone around tries to drag me down, I'm gonna stand my ground, I'm gonna stand. Every day I'm gonna stand my ground. Every day I know I won't back down. Yeah, I will always follow you, yeah. Every day I know you give me strength to follow and obey. And stand my ground, I'm gonna stand. I'm gonna stand my ground, no I will not be moved, because I know what's right, and that's what I'm gonna do. When everyone around tries to drag me down, I'm gonna stand my ground, I'm gonna stand. I'm gonna stand, I'm gonna stand my ground, I'm gonna stand. I'm gonna stand my ground, I'm gonna stand my ground, I'm gonna stand.
Light in the darkness, you are hope for the hopeless. You are the God who never fails. You are full of compassion. You are love everlasting. You are the God who never fails. And through it all, your love never changes. Through it all, there is nothing to fear. No. life and freedom. We will live for your kingdom, for all the world to know your name. You are strong through the ages, our song for all generations. Our mighty God has come to save. And through it all, your love never changes. Through it all, there is nothing to fear. Love, your name we're lifting higher. Your glory our desire. Your praise we'll sing forever. Our great God, our great God. No strength, no power greater, no equal to our Savior. You're the name above all others. Our great God, our great God. All our hope has been fulfilled, death exchanged for life. Perfect love has been revealed, our God is alive. All our hope has been fulfilled, death exchanged for life. Perfect love has been revealed, our God is alive. Your name we're lifting higher, your glory our desire. Your praise we'll sing forever. Our great God, our great God. No strength, no power greater, no equal to our Savior. You're the name above all others. Our great God, our great God. Your name we're lifting higher, your glory our desire. Your praise we'll sing forever. Our great God, our great God. No strength, no power greater, no equal to our Savior. You're the name above all others. Our great God, our great God. Our great God, our great God.
Welcome to Story Lab. This week, we're talking about courage, while we take a look at the story of a kid who landed a giant job. Oh, and we're also going to be doing this. Hey, I'm Skylar.
And I'm Sebastian.
We're talking about courage, which is being brave enough to do what you should do, even when you're afraid.
Yeah, like when you're trying something brand new.
I got something new.
A belt.
Nope, it's a slingshot.
No, that's not a slingshot.
Of course it is.
I used to make slingshots with sticks and rubber bands.
This kind of slingshot is sometimes called a shepherd's sling.
Oh, you're talking about David and Goliath.
Spoiler alert! Today's Bible story is about David and Goliath.
I've always wondered how David could knock out a giant with one stone.
Well, check this out.
Some ancient armies had slingers who could shoot stones over 60 miles an hour up to 400 meters. They were sometimes faster and more deadly than arrows.
I'm sorry, I misjudged you, slingshot bow. Don't feel bad. Don't feel bad.
Oh, and get this. Sometimes the slingers would write insults on their stones before shooting them. Archaeologists have dug up stones that read, "Take this, victory, catch." Oh, and wait for it. Ouch.
Oh, for reals?
I did not make that up.
So how does this thing work?
This is the cradle, and these are the retention cords. The sling acts as an extension of your arm. And when you place a stone in and spin it, the sling multiplies the force of your throw.
We gotta try this out.
Let's do it! Okay, you see that target?
Yeah.
Can you see through the guard?
I can see.
Okay, one of us is gonna hit that target. None of us are leaving here until one of us hits that target.
We're gonna be here for a while.
I'm gonna hit it.
She's not gonna hit it.
Okay, don't try this at home.
We're in a professional story lab.
True. Okay, first, you're gonna take your index finger and you're gonna put it through the loop.
Okay, I got it.
Got it? Okay. Then you're gonna grab onto this retention cord.
Okay.
Make sure you hold on tight. Then you're gonna place your stone in and then you're gonna swing with a bunch of momentum from an underhand arc.
All right.
Once enough momentum is built, you're gonna release the retention cord.
All right.
Okay, ready? Hey, that was pretty close. Hey, let me go.
You go first.
Okay.
I'm gonna try the figure 8.
Or not. Way harder than it looks.
I mean, David had all day, every day to practice in the fields.
Which reminds me, it's time for...
The story before the story.
Today, we're in the 9th book of the Old Testament, 1 Samuel.
God promised to bless the whole world through Abraham's family, the Israelites.
God delivered them from slavery and led them through the desert to freedom in the land of Canaan.
But the Israelites were like a yo-yo. They'd run to God and turn away from God. Run to God, turn away from God.
Instead of trusting God to lead them, they begged for a king like the nations around them. And God gave them a king, Saul.
But Saul turned his back on what God wanted too.
Which is where our story starts.
Take it away!
Hey, Erica.
Hey everyone! At this time, one of the ways God spoke to the people was through a priest. The high priest Samuel had loved and listened to God since he was a young boy, and he was deeply saddened when he saw that King Saul was ignoring God. But God spoke to Samuel.
I am sending you to Jesse in Bethlehem. I have chosen one of his sons to be king.
So Samuel was in a tricky position. Saul could have Samuel killed for anointing a new king, but Samuel chose to be brave and do exactly as God had told him. Samuel traveled to Bethlehem, where Jesse lived with his sons. The first son, Eliab, was tall and handsome and definitely looked like king material. And Samuel thought to himself,
"Oh, this has to be the one the Lord wants me to anoint for him."
but God had something super important to say to Samuel. Do not consider how handsome or tall he is. I have not chosen him. People look at the outside of a person, but the Lord looks at what's in his heart. Jesse had 6 other sons stand right in front of Samuel, but even though they looked pretty kingly, God made it clear to Samuel.
Well, God hasn't chosen them either. Are these the only sons you have?
Well, my youngest son is taking care of the sheep.
Well, okay, I'll send for him.
So of course, Jesse sent for his youngest son, David. And when David showed up, well, he looked and smelled like he'd been hanging out with, well, a bunch of sheep. But God was looking at David's heart instead of his haircut. He told Samuel,
Get up and anoint him. This is the one.
So Samuel poured oil on David's head, a special sign that God had chosen him to be the next king of Israel. Okay, now, just to be clear, David was not king yet. In fact, Saul didn't even know there was a new king waiting in the wings. He was busy leading the nation, and later trying to fight off a Philistine invasion. And the Philistines had a secret weapon, a warrior more than 9 feet tall, named Goliath.
Choose one of your men. Have him come face me to decide this war. I dare you.
Obviously, the Israelites were terrified! For 40 days in a row, they cowered behind the battle line as Goliath repeated his dare. Now, David's brothers were part of Saul's army. And after all this time, their dad wanted to make sure they were okay. So, Jesse told David to leave the sheep behind and take some food to his brothers. David arrived just in time to hear Goliath's challenge.
Come and fight me. I dare you.
Right away, David turned the men around him.
He's bringing shame on Israel and trash-talking God. Someone has to fight him.
Word got back to King Saul that this kid was asking about Goliath. So Saul sent for David.
Don't let anyone lose hope because of this Philistine. I'll go out and fight him.
You're too young.
When I'm taking care of my father's sheep, sometimes a wild animal attacks. I go after it to save the sheep. I've killed a lion and a bear. God saved me from them, and he'll save me from this Philistine.
Go. May the Lord be with you.
At first, Saul wanted David to wear his own armor. But it was super heavy, and David wasn't used to it. So David shrugged it off and went and found 5 smooth stones from the stream instead.
Come and fight me!
This time, when Goliath made his challenge, David stepped forward. The warrior mocked him.
Come over here. I'll feed you to the wild animals.
You come against me with a sword, but I come against you in the name of the Lord. He'll give me victory over you.
As Goliath moved to attack, David raced forward. He took one of those stones, fit it in his sling, and spun it with all his might. The stone sliced through the air and hit Goliath squarely on the head. Ow. The giant swayed and fell to the ground, dead. When the Philistines saw their hero was dead, they panicked and ran. The Israelites chased them until their whole army scattered. And Saul was so impressed with David, he invited him to come and live at the palace. The end.
That story gives me the chills, no matter how many times I hear it. I mean, how did David have the guts to do that?
Well, David had gotten in the habit of talking to God every day and asking for God's help to protect the sheep.
So when he came up against something that seemed impossible,
He had practice. He was ready.
so what's our part in the story?
Now, I don't think any of us will meet a 9-foot-tall giant soon, but you probably are going to face something that feels big and impossible.
Maybe someone you know is sick. You're super nervous about visiting them, but you can encourage them and show them God's love, even when things feel dark.
Or maybe your giant is PE. I have a friend who hates running. She was gonna pretend to be sick on the day she had to run a mile in PE.
What happened?
Well, we talked to God about it together, and she got out there and ran.
Wow. Yep. You don't have to do the impossible alone. Jesus went up against the biggest, scariest thing of all, death, and he defeated it. God raised Jesus from the dead, and when we believe in Jesus, we get to face our fears with the very same power that raised Jesus back to life. All right, you guys, I'll see you next time.
Bye, Erica.
So here's the thing. You can do what you should, even when things seem impossible.
Like actually trying to hit the target with this thing.
We looked a little weird.
Yes, we did. Wanna try again?
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us in the Story Lab. See you next time.
In today's story, we saw how God sent David to the Israelites to remind them of how awesome and amazing God is, that they could have courage because God is the one who fights their battles for them. So here's our Start the Conversation question for today. What have you learned about God from being sent? We've seen all sorts of ways where God has shown up in Israel's story. So what does that teach you about who God is and why we can trust and follow Him?